Hi guys, sorry to interrupt your viewing, but please subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you.
It started the way these things always do. Paper plates, half-warm hot dogs, kids screaming in the sprinkler, and the unmistakable hum of people pretending they still like each other after decades of repressed memories and overcooked holiday dinners. The backyard at Mom's place hadn't changed in 20 years. Same faded patio chairs, same crooked bird bath full of algae, and the same cracked ceramic angel by the fence that Mark broke when he was 12 and blamed on me. He got ice cream. I got grounded. Classic. I was standing near the grill, nursing a watered-down beer, watching the smoke curl into the late afternoon sky like it had somewhere better to be. Everyone looked older, fatter, grayer, or just tired in that way only family can make you. Mark was holding court by the folding table, laughing too loud with Mike and some guy I didn't recognize, probably another realtor with veneers and no soul. Karen, our mother, floated between conversations like she always did, pretending everything was fine, even when the walls were burning down around her. I hadn't even been there 20 minutes before I felt the old itch behind my eyes, the one that says, "You're not really wanted here. You're tolerated." That's when he started. Mark had cracked his second beer, maybe third, his voice already shifting into that smug, performative tone he reserves for when he knows he has an audience. He was talking about his new boat, of course it had a boat, and how some people spend all day at the doctor instead of doing something with their lives. My spine went rigid. I didn't turn around. I just watched the smoke rise. And then he said it. Lena's not sick. She just wants the attention. She always has. There it was. The sound of 100 invisible cuts reopening at once. I could feel the heat crawling up my neck like ants. A couple of people gave awkward chuckles, the kind that come from not knowing whether something's a joke or a confession. Mike snorted and added, "Right? What is it this time, Lena? Gluten sensitivity or just another 'oh no, I am tired again' week?" Someone behind me sucked in their breath. Jamie, probably. She knew. She'd been with me when I collapsed outside the clinic 2 weeks ago, when my legs turned to rubber and the world spun sideways and I threw up into a stranger's purse. I didn't say a damn word. I didn't need to, because across the yard, standing under the cheap white tent Mom had borrowed from the church, was Dr. Ellis. He looked almost out of place, still in his light blue shirt and charcoal slacks, holding a manila envelope in one hand and a bottle of water in the other. He had a look on his face like he wasn't sure why he agreed to come. I knew why. I asked him to. I let Mark keep talking. "I mean, come on," he went on, "she's been complaining about being tired since high school. Maybe it's just laziness, not a medical condition." Laughter this time. Real, full-throated, cruel. It rolled across the backyard like thunder. I felt it in my teeth. I turned slowly, like I wasn't in any rush to let it rattle me, and I met Mark's eyes. "Did you bring it?" I asked. Every conversation stopped. Mark froze. The beer halfway to his mouth. Karen looked up from the potato salad like someone had slapped her. Dr. Ellis stepped forward, blinking against the sun, and lifted the envelope slightly in the air. "Right here," he said. And just like that, the air shifted. It was subtle at first, the way tension always is. You don't feel it until everyone stops breathing at the same time. Mark tried to laugh it off, he always does, but his eyes darted. He didn't know what was in that envelope. And for the first time in a long, long while, I had something he didn't, the element of surprise. I walked toward Ellis, heels crunching on dead grass, and took the envelope from his outstretched hand. I didn't open it. Not yet. I turned to the crowd, family, friends, neighbors, even some of Mark's sycophants, and I smiled. Not a fake, polite smile. A real one. The kind you save for moments you've waited years to savor. "Since we're all sharing medical opinions today," I said, "I thought I'd bring a second opinion. One that's, licensed." There was a beat of silence, then two. Someone let out a low whistle. Probably Mike again. He always did mistake chaos for comedy. Mark stepped forward, hands raised like he was trying to keep the peace. Lena, come on. You're making a scene. I tilted my head. Am I? Because 5 minutes ago, you were calling me a liar in front of our family. I'm just responding with data. Dr. Ellis cleared his throat. You asked me to bring this personally, he said to me. I assume you want me to read it? Mark's voice cracked. You're kidding me. But I just nodded, eyes never leaving my brother's face. Read it, I said. Let everyone hear it. And that's when I knew I had him. Not because he was afraid of being wrong. Mark's been wrong his whole life and never lost a wink of sleep over it. No, what scared him was the idea of not being able to twist the narrative. Because whatever was in that envelope wasn't going to come from me, it was going to come from someone he couldn't gaslight. Dr. Ellis opened the flap. Mark's jaw tightened. Jamie covered her mouth. My mother stared at the envelope like it might explode. And me? I just waited, quiet as a tomb, ready for the storm. Some people think childhood memories fade with time, softening around the edges like a worn photograph left out in the sun. But mine never did. They stayed sharp and bitter, pressed into my brain like glass shards beneath the skin. I remember every laugh that wasn't mine, every time the door slammed in my face, and every time my brother got away with murder while I got grounded for blinking the wrong way. When you grow up in someone else's spotlight, you learn early how to live in shadows. Mark was the golden child. That wasn't just a phrase we tossed around. It was the unwritten rule in our house. He walked on water from the moment he could crawl, and I swear to God, Mom had that boy's name carved into her heart before mine ever made it out of her mouth. He got the better teachers, the bigger slices of cake, the brand-name clothes while I wore hand-me-downs from someone else's daughter. The sun practically came up just to shine on his damn face. One time, I must have been about 6, maybe 7, we were at the park down the road, that busted-up place with one swing and half a slide, and we were playing the usual game where Mark would pretend to push me gently, but then always push just hard enough that it hurt. That day, he shoved me so hard I flew off the swing like a rag doll and landed wrong on my wrist. It snapped with a sound I still hear in my sleep sometimes. I was screaming, holding my arm, twisted and red, and Mark told Mom I jumped off like an idiot and fell on purpose. She believed him, of course. She dragged me home by the good arm, furious, told me to stop being so dramatic, that I was always making things into a scene, and when she finally took me to urgent care 2 days later, the doctor looked at the x-ray and said, well, she's been walking around with a broken radius. Mom didn't even blink. She just said, she has a high pain tolerance. She'll be fine. And that was the end of that. Back then, we were 6 and 8, which means we were like 4 years apart. There were no apologies. No come-to-Jesus moments. Just more of the same. Every time I tried to stand up for myself, Mark found a way to twist it, make it my fault, and turn the people around me into his personal jury. He was good at it. Scary good. You know the type, smiles like a politician, lies like it's holy work. I used to think he practiced in the mirror, the way he could flick his voice into sympathy or shock or rage like flipping a damn switch. And the worst part was, no one wanted to believe me. Because believing me meant accepting that the golden child wasn't actually golden, he was just loud, charming, and good at turning truth into a puddle of half-remembered nonsense. And I was just the tired, cranky little sister with dark circles and a short fuse. I was too smart for my own good, too weird, too sarcastic. I didn't cry the right way. I didn't get quiet when I was supposed to. So they stopped listening. I stopped talking. It was easier that way. Quieter. Safer. I learned to stay still when the storm rolled in and let Mark blow himself out. That was the pattern. He'd push and shove, I'd take it, and the family would nod along like it was just kids being kids or Mark being Mark. Meanwhile, I carried it all, every insult, every eye roll, every dinner table where my opinion didn't count, every whispered, God, she's exhausting, that I wasn't supposed to hear. And now, all these years later, standing in Mom's backyard with the smoke from the grill curling around my ankles, I could still feel the weight of it. It didn't fade. It calcified. My silence wasn't surrender, it was survival. Because fighting Mark never worked. He was too good at turning the room. But now? Now I had something better than a voice. I had proof. And I had timing. And in my experience, those two things will destroy a liar faster than any scream ever could. From the other side of the yard, I heard the sound of Mark laughing. Big, full, smug as hell, and meant for everyone to hear. "Oh, come on, Lena," he said, loud enough to turn heads. "You seriously brought your doctor to a barbecue?" He was smirking, beer in one hand, already sure he was going to win this one too. I didn't answer. I didn't even look at him. Instead, I glanced at Dr. Ellis, who was reaching into his worn leather bag with the same calm expression he always wore in the exam room, like he'd seen everything and wasn't impressed by any of it. I could feel the tension start to build again, like a thundercloud just off the edge of the horizon. Everyone sensed it. The laughter started to dry up, eyes shifting back and forth between us. The game was changing, and for the first time in our lives, Mark didn't know the rules. He was still smiling, but it was cracking at the edges. That little twitch in his left eye was starting, the one he got when he was losing control. And me? I just folded my arms, leaned slightly toward him, and said calmly, "Well, since you've diagnosed me in front of half the neighborhood, I figured it'd be nice to hear what an actual doctor thinks." Dr. Ellis pulled out the envelope. Mark stopped laughing. 2 weeks before the barbecue, I stood outside my mother's house with a casserole in my hands and a gut full of dread. It was one of those Sunday afternoons where the air felt thick, like it knew something you didn't, and I remember thinking how strange it was that even the birds seemed quieter than usual. I had only come because Jamie had asked me to. She said Mom had been asking about me and that maybe I should try to show up for once. I almost laughed in her face. Show up for what, exactly? More polite dismissal? More side glances when I asked to sit down because my legs are acting up again? But Jamie had a way of making me feel guilty without saying much at all, and so there I was, potluck pasta in hand, fake smile on my face, walking straight into a house that never really felt like home. It didn't take long before I heard my name. Not in a kind way. Not even in a curious way. Just as the punchline. I was standing near the hallway, still taking off my jacket when I caught the sound of Mark's voice drifting from the living room. He wasn't whispering. He never whispered. He always wanted to be heard, especially when he was tearing someone down. It was like breathing for him. I paused, just out of sight, the carpet scratchy beneath my bare feet, and listened. "She's not sick, she's just bored," he was saying. "She needs attention. You know how she is. Lena gets this way when she doesn't have a boyfriend or anything else going on. It's like, what's wrong with being tired? Everyone's tired. But no, she has to make it this whole production." Someone chuckled. It was a woman. I couldn't tell who. Maybe one of Mom's friends, or worse, Jamie. The idea twisted in my chest like rusted wire. And all this doctor nonsense? He kept going, like he was building momentum now. It's just sad, honestly. I mean, she doesn't even have kids. Or a husband. So, what else is she gonna do? Being sick is the only way she gets people to look at her. I froze. Right there in the hallway, I just froze. Because there was something so raw and targeted in what he said, something that didn't just aim to embarrass, it aimed to annihilate. This wasn't teasing. This was surgical cruelty. I should have walked in and said something. I should have shoved the casserole dish in his smug face. But I didn't. I turned and walked toward the back bathroom because suddenly I needed to be anywhere else. I didn't expect to find Jamie there, leaning over the sink, her eyes red and makeup smudged in the corners. She looked up when I opened the door, startled like a kid caught stealing. "Lena," she whispered, wiping her face. I didn't know you were here already." I nodded but didn't speak. I was still shaking too hard. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, then closed it. That silence was worse than anything Mark had said. Because Jamie knew. She'd heard it. She'd been right there. And she didn't stop him. I left without saying goodbye. That night, lying awake in my apartment, I played it over and over in my head. The sound of his voice, the way he said she needs attention, like it was some kind of character flaw. As if asking for help was pathetic. As if suffering in silence was a badge of honor he wore proudly while I was supposed to just disappear. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. And somewhere around 3 in the morning, I made a decision I should have made years ago. The next day, I called Dr. Ellis. I asked him to print every scan, every blood test, every note he had taken in the last 6 months. I didn't explain why. I just told him I wanted copies and that I'd be by later to pick them up. He didn't ask questions. He just said, of course, and told me he'd have them ready by Thursday. But by Thursday, I had a better idea. I called back and asked if he would consider doing me a strange favor, bringing the results in person to a family gathering. I could feel him hesitate on the other end of the line, the way doctors do when they think they're about to get dragged into a domestic mess. But then he said something that surprised me. "Lena," he said quietly, "I've seen your file. I've seen what you've been through. If this will help, I'll be there." That was the moment I knew. The game had changed. I didn't tell anyone. Not Jamie. Not Mom. And definitely not Mark. I let them keep talking. Let them keep laughing. I let them keep thinking I was still the girl who would go home, cry in the shower, and shrink herself down until she could pass for invisible. Let them think I was still afraid. I was done playing fair. 2 weeks later, at that damned barbecue, I watched my brother's face freeze when he saw Dr. Ellis walking up with his leather bag and that envelope I knew he hadn't let go of since printing it. Mark tried to keep laughing, but his voice cracked just a little at the end. I caught that crack like a hunter catching scent. Dr. Ellis stood beside me and looked out at the crowd of people holding beers and paper plates, most of them still unsure what was happening. He adjusted his glasses and said, "Actually, I brought something for you all." There's a kind of silence that feels like noise, thick, tense, loaded with things nobody wants to say out loud, and when Dr. Ellis stepped forward and held the manila envelope like it was a courtroom verdict, that silence swallowed the entire backyard. You could hear the cicadas buzzing in the trees, the soft clink of someone nervously adjusting the ice in their drink, and the tiny flutter of napkins caught in the late summer breeze. For a moment, nobody moved. It was like time had decided to take a knee and watch this whole damn thing unfold. Mark was standing maybe 10 feet from me, arms crossed, mouth twitching like he couldn't decide whether to smirk or scream, and for once in his life, he didn't have the stage. That belonged to Dr. Ellis, now tall, calm, and methodical, the kind of man who didn't raise his voice because he didn't need to. His presence alone felt like a reset button for reality. "I was asked to bring these results personally," Ellis said, addressing the small sea of faces now watching with varying degrees of discomfort, confusion, and barely concealed guilt. "And with Lena's permission, I'm going to read them." Mark snorted, a low derisive sound that cut through the air like a rusty blade. "Oh, come on. This is ridiculous," he muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear, but Ellis didn't even flinch. He opened the envelope with steady hands, pulled out 2 sheets of paper, and began reading in the same even, professional tone I had come to recognize over the last few months. It was the voice of someone who told people hard things for a living and never once lost his footing. After reviewing blood work, MRI imaging, and a comprehensive neurological exam, he began, "Lena Carter has been diagnosed with early-stage relapsing-remitting multiple sclerosis." A low murmur rippled through the crowd, nothing dramatic, just the soft collective exhale of a group of people realizing they'd been dead wrong. Mark's smirk vanished so fast it was like watching a balloon pop. Jamie gasped audibly, one hand flying to her chest, while Mom just stood there, arms limp at her sides, mouth slightly open like a fish out of water. It was almost funny if it hadn't been so pathetic. "I want to be clear," Ellis continued, flipping to the second page without hesitation. This is a confirmed diagnosis, supported by objective findings, white matter lesions in the brain and spinal cord, as well as symptomatic evidence consistent with early MS. It's not psychological. It's not stress-related. And it's certainly not fabricated for attention. He didn't raise his voice, but every word landed like a hammer. I could feel the atmosphere shift, the invisible weight finally sliding off my shoulders and landing somewhere square on Mark's smug face. He opened his mouth to interrupt, of course he did, but Ellis raised one hand, not unkindly but firmly, and said, "You've had your turn to speak, Mark. Now it's mine." And just like that, Mark shut up. It might have been the first time I'd ever seen him do it. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel vindicated. Not exactly. What I felt was stillness, a bone-deep calm that settled over me like cool water. I looked out at the people who had laughed, who had nodded along while my brother tore me down, and saw the way their eyes dropped to the grass, or the table, or their own shoes. It wasn't shame I wanted from them, it was awareness. I wanted them to sit in the discomfort, to really feel what it meant to be so sure about something and be completely, utterly wrong. I walked past Mark slowly, each step measured like I had all the time in the world, and when I reached him, I paused. I didn't touch him. I didn't raise my voice. I just leaned in, close enough that only he could hear, and said quietly, "Tell me, was it still for attention, or do you just hate that I finally have proof?" His jaw clenched so hard I thought he might break his own teeth. That was the moment. That flicker of helpless rage in his eyes, the realization that he couldn't spin this, couldn't bully his way out, couldn't twist the story anymore. That was the real win. Not the diagnosis, not the sympathy, but the utter destruction of his illusion of control. Mark stepped back like I'd burned him. "You're unbelievable," he snapped, his voice cracking, his hands clenched into trembling fists. "You set this whole thing up, didn't you? Just to make me look bad." He turned to the crowd, desperate now, eyes wild. "She loves playing the victim. She always has. This is classic Lena." But no one was backing him up. Even Mike, his usual yes man, was looking away, red-faced and silent. Mom looked like she might faint. Jamie was crying openly now, her hands over her mouth, eyes locked on mine like she didn't know whether to run toward me or away from herself. "You just love playing the victim." Mark shouted again, louder this time, but it sounded hollow now, like he was yelling into a canyon, and only the echo answered. Then he stormed off, shoving past chairs and beer coolers, knocking over a folding table as he went. The clang of metal against concrete echoed across the yard. Nobody followed him. I didn't say another word. I just stood there as people finally began to see what had been in front of them all along. Not just the illness, not just the pain, but the years of being dismissed, diminished, and disregarded. Dr. Ellis handed me the papers without a word. I took them, folded them neatly, and tucked them under my arm. For the first time in my life, I felt taller than my brother. And I hadn't even raised my voice. The barbecue didn't recover after Mark left. It sort of collapsed in on itself like a cheap tent in a storm, folding down into awkward silence and quiet apologies and people suddenly realizing they had somewhere else they needed to be. Someone turned off the music without a word. The kids stopped yelling and just wandered inside to play on their phones. Mom stood next to the potato salad table, one hand on her hip, trying to act like nothing had happened, like her son hadn't just detonated in front of everyone, but her eyes kept darting around like she was searching for a script she'd lost years ago. She looked over at me once, only once, and I could tell she was working out whether to play concerned or just disappointed, like she always did. But I wasn't looking for her performance this time. I didn't need it. The curtain had already dropped. Jamie came over first, mascara streaked down her cheeks and her arms already open before she even said a word. She hugged me like someone who finally understood what it meant to not be believed for too long. There were no words between us at first, just the kind of hug that said more than anyone ever could, and when she pulled back, her voice was hoarse. I'm sorry, she said, over and over, like the repetition could scrub away the fact that she hadn't stopped him when it mattered most. I just nodded. I wasn't mad. Not really. The truth is, you learn not to expect rescue when you've lived your whole life training to survive the fall on your own. People trickled out slowly after that, making their goodbyes short and strained. Some mumbling things like, I had no idea, or you should have said something, which honestly made me want to laugh in their faces. As if saying something ever worked. As if people like Mark didn't make it their whole damn job to talk louder than the truth. I just smiled and let them squirm through their guilt, offering polite nods and clipped responses, giving them exactly what they wanted, a version of me they could live with. Mom approached me near the end, looking like she'd rehearsed every step of it. Her voice was soft, like she thought if she kept her tone low, I might forget every sharp word she'd ever thrown my way when I tried to speak up. You should have told me, Lena, she said, eyes darting. I didn't know it was that serious. She hesitated before the word, like saying it might infect her. I looked at her for a long second, not speaking, letting her stew in the discomfort. Then I said, you knew something was wrong. You just didn't care until everyone else saw it too. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, then shut it again. For once, she didn't try to win the conversation. She just walked away. I was the last one left in the yard, aside from Dr. Ellis, who was gathering his things with the same quiet efficiency he brought to everything. He moved slowly, giving me space, but when he finally approached, he didn't hand me any more papers or ask if I was okay. He just said my name softly, like he was preparing me for something. Lena, he said, his eyes steady and serious. There's something we haven't confirmed yet, so I didn't mention it in front of the others, but I need you to come back in this week. There's something in your scans, something else. The words hit harder than I expected, not like a punch, but like a pressure change in a room you thought was safe. My chest tightened, but I kept my face calm. I'd gotten good at that, too good, maybe. I nodded slowly and said, okay, like it was just another errand, like it was picking up dry cleaning or going to the grocery store. But my hands were cold. I could feel the sweat building behind my knees. I wanted to ask what he meant, what he saw, what he thought it could be, but I didn't. Not yet. I wasn't ready to hold that weight in front of witnesses. Dr. Ellis didn't push. He just gave me a small, sad smile, the kind reserved for people who already know more than they're saying. We'll talk soon, he said, then left me standing there under the setting sun, the last guest at a party that had never really wanted me there in the first place. As I walked toward the house, my footsteps crunching over dead grass and forgotten plastic cups, I felt something unexpected bloom inside me, not fear, exactly, but clarity. I didn't fake my illness. But maybe I faked something else of how okay I am. What people don't get is that sometimes the worst pain isn't in your body. It's in how easy it is for people you love to stop believing in you. It's in the way silence wraps around a dinner table when your truth doesn't match their version of you. It's in the way you learn to smile while being erased. They all thought today was the end of the story. But it wasn't. It was just the first time they were forced to look. I don't know what's coming next. Maybe it's worse. Maybe it's better. But either way, I'll face it the way I always have, alone, if I have to, but never quiet again. And Mark? He still doesn't know everything. But one day he will.